Hey guys, it's time for another creepy scary video, and for tonight's creepy video I am going to be talking about phantom phone calls. I'm going to be reading you guys a few phantom phone call stories from other people, and if you don't know what a phantom phone call is, basically it is believed to be a spirit of like a loved one or a friend or someone that you knew that has just recently passed on, and they are trying to communicate with you. They're trying to make their presence known through your phone by calling your phone. And to me, that's like the creepiest thing in the world. I mean, it could also be like accidental phone calls from someone, but the ones that creep me out the most are the ones that are kind of unexplainable and that are kind of paranormal. So I'm going to be reading you guys a few of these phantom phone calls. The phone call that never was. My mom usually picks me up from work, and she doesn't work far from me. One Tuesday night, we were driving home when I asked her how my dad's computer classes were going. My dad usually attended the computer classes every Tuesday night. She said she didn't know, as she hadn't spoke to him about it. She asked me why. I replied, well, when I was speaking to him, he said he was having some trouble. They had been given 3 assignments to complete, but he couldn't finish assignment number 2, as the computer wouldn't save as. I think he eventually managed to do them all though. Alright, she said. The night with a conversation with my mom forgotten, I was sitting watching TV when my dad knocked on the door. He said, I was speaking to Mom earlier about the conversation you had about my computer class. How did you know we had 3 assignments and I had trouble with the second one? Confused, I said, you told me that on the phone. No, I didn't. There is no way you could have known that because I have just come from my computer class. You had the conversation with Mom before I went, and what you told Mom happened tonight. I couldn't have known we had 3 assignments as I missed last week's class. We both just sat there looking at each other trying to figure out how I knew what was going to happen before it did. I was sure we had spoken on the phone about it, but how could we if it hadn't happened? The strange thing is, I can remember my dad telling me what happened on the phone, but I can't recall how, where, and when. The call from grandfather. Sometime in 1999, our phone was out. My mother was at work and I was asleep when the phone rang and woke me up. I answered the phone but didn't hear anything. I listened, and then this man said something that I did not understand. I said, "What?" Then the man repeated himself. He said, "Is this the barber shop?" "No," I said, that I didn't hear anything else. The phone sounded dead, so I hung up. But I soon realized that the person sounded exactly like my grandfather, who had been dead for 4 or 5 years. The phone was even working at the time it rang, because after it had rung, I picked it up and the phone was still out. I'm convinced it was my grandfather. Whew! Oh my god. Whew! This gives me goosebumps. The message from the afterlife. My sister has had some pretty interesting activity on her answering machine and phones. I have heard messages from the other side left on her answering machine. We know someone or something is trying to communicate with her using electronic energy as the mode. What we both want to know is how we can better receive these messages. The messages are sometimes hard to make out, yet some of the words are very clear. These messages are not left by human vocal cords, that much we know. We do not know where to go for this. I mean, it's not like we can call ghost hunters or anything. She recently has had a good friend pass away, and I also have had a friend pass. It could be one of these 2 ladies, or it could be any lost soul in need of assistance. Today's message said, as far as we could make out, I'm calling from the afterlife. Pick up the phone. This one is called the anniversary call. I was asleep one Sunday morning and heard the phone ringing. I tried to wake myself enough to answer it, and when I did, it was my father. I was stunned. He had a big voice like James Earl Jones, so there was no mistaking who it was. He asked me how I was doing. I had just had major surgery a few weeks earlier and was in recovery. He asked me if I'd heard about the death of 2 people. I told him I hadn't. He told me that things would get better and to hang in there. He loved me and that he had to go. When I hung up the phone, it was as if I stepped from another level back into this one. I immediately called my siblings to tell them Daddy called. My father called on September 13th, the 2nd anniversary of his death. Oh, just like whenever I read that they were dead and they called, like it gives me goosebumps. A final goodbye. It says, the most disturbing phone call you received tonight may not, in fact, be that telemarketer asking if you use Windows. It may instead be a phone call from beyond the grave. Don't believe me? Consider the events of September 12, 2008, when a Metrolink commuter train passing through the Chatworth district of Los Angeles collided with a freight train. One of its passengers, Charles E. Peck, died on impact at 4:22 p.m. that day, and 25 others also perished in the crash. However, Peck's story did not end there. For 11 hours, up until the point when rescue teams recovered his body, Peck's cell phone dialed out to a number of his family members: his fiancée, his stepmother, his brother, his sister, and his son. All they heard when they answered was static, and returning the calls only led to his voicemail. The calls were, however, able to lead searchers to the location of Peck's body some 12 hours later, at which point they determined he had died on impact. An hour before they found him, the calls stopped. Although, strangely enough, they never did locate his cell phone. This one's called Be Careful. Another ghostly phone call occurred on September 20th, 1988, involving the prolific author Dean Knutz, I hope I'm saying that right, as Catherine Ramsland shared in 2013. Knutz had been at his office that day when he received an unexpected phone call. When he answered, a female voice that sounded far away spoke to him, but it only spoke 3 words: please be careful. Knutz asked who it was, but received no answer. Instead, the ghostly voice simply repeated its cryptic warning 3 times before fading to silence. Knutz sat dumbfounded, listening intently to the now silent phone line, and he wondered, who could it have been? His number was unlisted after all, and the voice sounded strangely like his mother's, but she had been dead for almost 2 years. Perhaps the story wouldn't be worth mentioning here if not for what happened only 2 days later. 2 days after this call, Dean went to visit his father at the facility where he lived. The staff was dealing with Ray's behavioral problems, and they had asked Dean to come and talk with him. Ray had punched another resident, a man on a walker, and the nurses were worried. Dean was unaware that Ray had used some of his small allowance to go buy a yellow-handled fishing knife, and had honed it to razor sharpness and oiled the hinge to make it open like a switchblade. When Dean came to the room, Ray moved fast. He grabbed the knife from a drawer, and Dean had to wrestle it away from him. He just managed to avoid being slashed. There were many witnesses to this altercation, and one of them called the police. Finally, Dean got the knife without incident and carried it out into the hall just as the police had arrived. So this one I'm very excited about because it has an actual EVP of this, an EVP voicemail. So I'm going to read you guys the story first and then I'm going to let you listen. Now you may be wondering, with these being phone calls, especially with the existence of voicemail, surely some recordings are available. Good thinking. While you can't trust everything you see or hear on the internet, there's always something. On April 12, 2011, for example, the above video was uploaded to YouTube. It contains an alleged ghostly phone message. From this video's description, we're told that the uploader's grandfather passed away on December 23, 2010, only a few months prior to the video's upload date. The phone rang once, and the uploader immediately received a voicemail notification. "This is what I got," she wrote. White noise and a clear whisper, "Grandpa." And I'm going to try to see if you guys can hear it.
Saved message. Saved message.
Ugh! I think it's so cool whenever they actually have the EVP that you can hear it on too. That just makes it even creepier. So I'm gonna do 1 or 2 more and then I'm gonna stop. So this one says, no number. Of course, who really uses a phone these days anyway? Believe it or not, a few messages from the dead have arrived not by phone, but by text message. In 2008, the Register reported the bizarre tale of Lancashire man who claimed to be haunted by text messages from his deceased wife. They had, after all, buried her with her cell phone. The text would contain words that she'd often used, but there would be no number. The strange experience did, however, begin with a missed call, one from his own number, and the strange smell of his wife's perfume. That's not to mention the strange encounters he and his family had experienced involving what they called the Thing, but perhaps that's a story for another time. A rather bizarre, well-circulated, I can't talk, and allegedly recorded case of a call from the dead happened in 1994. That's the year that I was born. When a paranormal researcher by the name of George Meek was contacted from the land of the dead by his long-deceased colleague, Constantine, I can't say their last name. Meek and Constantine had been eminent researchers of recording and researching electronic voice phenomena, EVP, in which disembodied voices of spirits are supposedly caught on audio tape. Together, the two men had made it in their life work to attempt to investigate and prove the phenomena, and were claimed to have made several groundbreaking recordings to this end, but their research was cut short when Constantine's tragic death in 1974. Then in 1994, Meek claims that he started being contacted by his long-dead colleague through calls, emails, and even fax. It seems oddly fitting that such a prominent researcher of EVP should come back to successfully become a part of the very phenomena he had so doggedly studied. Like, this was like the 70s and the 90s. That's probably whenever, like, the first research for EVP started coming out. Like, it probably wasn't that very well known back then, and they probably didn't have that much evidence back then of EVPs. Meek claimed that he successfully made recordings of these calls from Constantine, one of which you can listen to in its deeply creepy entirety here. Oh, I'm totally doing that after I read this. Okay, I'll go ahead and read this one since it's already on here. Also is the case of a woman simply identified as Betty, who in the late 1990s got a very strange call indeed. Betty had been working at a new job at an office and her co-workers had been out at lunch. During this time, she claims that the phone of one of the other workers rang and she absent-mindedly picked it up. A man's voice on the other end asked for an unfamiliar name before correcting himself and asking for Mary, which was the name of the woman whose phone she had picked up. When Betty told him that Mary was out and that she could take a message, he allegedly said, "Could you tell her this is her brother? I really missed her at the family gathering and I wish that she had gone." When Mary returned, Betty passed along the message, which provoked a shocked reaction in the woman, prompting her to run off crying. Another co-worker then explained to the perplexed Betty that Mary's brother had died in a car crash 5 years before, that she had not gone to a recent family reunion 2 weeks prior due to her husband's health problems. The co-worker also related that the unfamiliar name was a nickname which only her brother had called her. So that is really, really sad. I'm going to go ahead and listen to Constantine's EVP.
Hi, this is George Meek. This is Constantine George, my friend, at last we succeeded in contacting you. Jen had to sit beside me, and she wants to give you all her love. This is Constantine Raudiver. This is the first contact you get from us. I suppose that you can hear me. I can hear you very well, very plainly. Fine, so this is the beginning of a new story, a new chapter, George. You are a very good friend of ours, even if we haven't met. We will continue this. This is the first bridge we succeeded to build to the States. Mark was contacted, and I must interrupt now. Thank you, dear friend. You may not be able to hear me, but I want to take this occasion to say...
I mean, after listening to that, I'm not really sure, 100% sure if that's real or not. Like, I'm not trying to, like, make it sound like I don't believe people. I truly do believe in the paranormal. I believe that this is a real thing. I believe that it can really happen. Like, someone can really call you from beyond the dead and try to make their presence known to you, especially if it's, like, a loved one or a friend or something that's passed on. But after listening to this, like, it doesn't, like, it just sounds like he's talking in, like, full sentences. And usually, like, I feel like it takes a lot for have enough energy to actually talk to you, or give you like an EVP or something. So for me, like, it just sounded odd that he called him and was like speaking full sentences, because it's not very common that spirits will do that. And even if it did happen, like, most likely you're not gonna get to record it. What he did was fake. It could very much be real, but from like what it sounded like, I'm just a little bit skeptical on it, I guess. But what do you think? What do you guys think of all of these phantom phone calls? And what would you do if you were ever in a situation where one of your loved ones that had just passed on called you? What would you do? What would you say to them? To me, I'd be kind of creeped out at first, but if it was a loved one and I know that they weren't trying to like harm me or scare me in any way, I feel like I would talk to them and just tell them how much I miss them and love them, and talk to them, because you know, you probably miss that person after they've been gone for that long, and you miss having conversations like that with them. So I would probably like talk to them like I did whenever they were alive. What would you do? And have you ever gotten a phantom phone call before? And if so, what happened? What did they say? I would love to know. So leave me a comment down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big ol' thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and become a morbid maniac. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!